Well, hello there. So, it's been quite some time since I did an episode of Writers Aren't Always Right. Well, we have arrived to a point where we have to stop being critical and actually find the best. Like, what actually makes the best kind of writing advice? So, you may or may not be familiar, but I will be reacting and giving opinions, and the flowers are obscuring the words. Anyway, the purpose of this video is to find advice that is actually helpful and does it give what the article title says. The good thing is that you can have me on in the background while you do things because I read everything and tell you everything. So, unlike my article scrolling reaction things, you don't have to look at the screen if you don't want to. You can you can be listening and doing things, maybe making dinner, or I don't know, doing homework, drawing pictures, crocheting, I don't know, whatever you do. You can just have this on and just listen. So, this is going to be ProWritingAid. So, in the top 6 search results on July 24, 2023, yes, it's been almost a year, I know, I looked up how to write a fiction novel, and ProWritingAid came up at the very top. So we're going to do the top. And I have heard a lot of people praise ProWritingAid as a tool and also for advice. So I kind of have high hopes for this, but we'll see, because I mean, we've gone over other ones like Reedsy and Masterclass and Jerry Jenkins, and there's been some things that were like a little bit problematic here. So we'll see. But ProWritingAid has been praised a lot. I've been seeing it a lot on Facebook writing groups and writing forums and stuff. So this is ProWritingAid, How to Write a Fiction Book, 10 Steps You Can't Miss, by Hannah Gang on December 28, 2022. That's when it says it was published. Although I've been noticing something with these articles is that sometimes they say they are published, but then later they have a different date where it says they updated it. But anyway, this one says it was published December 28, 2022. So that's what, 2 years ago? Almost 2 years ago? So, at first, they say, so you want to write a novel. Maybe you have a great idea for a story that you'd love to see on the page. Or maybe you just love reading books and want to try creating one of your own. Regardless of your reasons, you've come to the right place. This article will give you a step-by-step guide to help you start writing your first novel. So, that's how they begin. And then we're going to get into the parts, but this is going to be part 1, by the way. Since there are 10 steps, I'm going to separate it into 2 parts. So the first 5 steps and then the last 5 steps. So this is part 1. And if you have already come from part 2, like in the future, I haven't even recorded it yet at this point. But if you've come from there in the future, I would suggest you watch part 1 and then watch part 2 and then see, as a whole, is ProWritingAid actually helpful? So we will get into it. It feels so weird. I haven't done one of these types of ones where I'm just reading from the slides in a while. It feels weird. I'm used to scrolling through. Now, maybe I will be doing more of those in the future. Who knows? Anyway, we shall get into step 1. Choose a story idea. This is a lot of articles do start with this step. Choose story idea. The first step is to choose a story idea. You might already have a compelling idea developing in your head. If you don't, here are some prompts to get you started. Are there any experiences from your own life you can draw from? Are there any headlines in the news that intrigue you? Are there any images or photographs that you could turn into a story? Are there any popular stories you love that you could add a new spin to? Example, Sleeping Beauty in Space. Okay, so this is their step 1. You know, at least they give prompts. Some writing advice articles that give steps don't give like these prompts for story ideas. It's like, oh, come up with a story idea, and if you do, you need to write it down in your notebook that you carry with you everywhere. Of course you do. But they don't say that, and they say, here are some prompts. We're going to give you some prompts. The part about the images and photographs that you can turn into a story, that's what I usually do a lot of the time. That is how story ideas would come to me. Like I would see something on Pinterest or something like that. I even have a whole series and a whole 8-book series. Not really planned out, but sort of like, and as an idea, all coming from, with little, like, not all coming from, what am I trying to say? Little scenes, little snippets and scenes that were inspired by certain images on Pinterest. And I have them all together, and if I ever decide to write the entire series, it will be an 8-book series. Maybe someday will happen. So yeah, choose a story idea. It's a good place to start. Yeah. I mean, because where else are you going to start from, right? Story idea. So, oh yeah, that's the next slide. The next slide really doesn't, there wasn't any difference in the next slide, and I didn't realize it was the next slide. Okay. It's okay. This is still step 1, by the way. Choose a story idea. It's okay if you don't know all the details of your idea at this stage. All you need is a basic premise, which we'll be fleshing out as we go. Once you have a list of possible story ideas, it's time to choose the one you're most excited about. Don't worry about what your friends will think of it, or how many readers will like it, or what critics will say about it. Write the book that you would want to read. Follow your gut and choose the idea that sings to you. The thing is, I've never really thought about writing a book that I want to read. For me, it's more like I have these stories to tell, and the best way for me to do that is to write them. That's kind of like how I work. So I've never really, like when people say like write the story you want to read, I'm like, the kinds of stories that I want to read, like nonfiction seafaring stories, it's the kind of stories that sometimes I want to read. I can't write those. That's not my niche. That's not my area. So for me, it's like, write the book you want to read. Man, that doesn't really work for me. But I guess it works for some people. I mean, I've heard a lot of writers saying that. They think about, I really want to read this kind of book, but I can't find it in the market. Let me write it myself. That's what I've heard of a lot of writers have said that thing. So I guess they're telling the truth here. Yeah. I mean, I have nothing to say about the story idea stage. They haven't said anything weird, particularly. Nothing weird. They've said good things, like don't worry about what your friends will think of it, or how many readers will like it, or what critics will say about it. Like, don't think about that. That's a good thing to say. Yeah, that's a good thing to say. There have been some writing advice articles that would say, oh, you have to think about what your readers will like and that kind of thing, but like, no, not at the idea stage. You don't have to do that. So at least ProWritingAid is off to a good start. Good start. We'll see what happens if it goes downhill from here. We shall see. Okay. I need to click the screen so that it will move to step 2. Define the central conflict. That's interesting. Okay. Every great novel needs a conflict. After all, there's nothing less exciting than a book about someone waking up, having breakfast, and going about their normal life without running into any obstacles. So before you commit to writing the idea you've chosen, make sure there's a central conflict at play. A central conflict in play. Ask yourself these 2 questions. What's the protagonist's main goal in this story, and why do they want it? What's stopping them from achieving that goal? Interesting. This is reminding me of, there was a video that Abby Emmons, YouTube, that Abby Emmons did. It was like something to do with the beginning of the story. Like, she broke down all these Disney stories, like the first 5 minutes of the Disney of a Disney movie is like they show what the character wants, why they want it, and then why they can't get it, or what's stopping them, or what some kind of misconception of something that they have. And like Disney is really good at showing that in the first 5 minutes of the movie. And she was breaking that down, which was interesting. Doesn't really apply to everyone, I don't think, but anyway. So define a central conflict. It's interesting because I'm wondering if I just think about these things, because I'm a pantser, okay? I write by the seat of my pants. I don't outline my stories. So I'm wondering if I do this kind of thinking, but it just all happens in a blur. And that's why if I think about, how I start writing the story, I always say I just start writing the story, but maybe I'm actually thinking about these things. I need to think about that. So it's good that they give you these 2 questions to ask yourself. It says, what's the protagonist's main goal in the story and why do they want it? And what's stopping them from achieving that goal? So they give you these 2 questions to think about. So far, ProWritingAid seems to be good about giving prompts, which is nice because a lot of writing articles don't do that. They don't do that. They just throw you out into the Wild West and hope you survive. That's basically what those other articles do. So far, so good. Before you commit to writing the idea, make sure there's a central conflict in play. I mean, I feel like you could still start just writing the story without thinking about the central conflict and then come up with a central conflict along the way. I feel like you could do that, especially if you're a pantser. Like, if you're a pantser, you can just start writing and see what happens. You don't have to think about a central conflict from the beginning. A lot of the times, I don't think I do. I don't think I do. Maybe I do. I don't think I do. I'm not sure. It might even depend on the story, to be honest with you. So, I just smacked my lips. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, I feel like you could not do this step and you just start writing if you're a pantser. But I mean, they're not saying anything particularly wrong here. I'm just saying, because if you're a different type of writer, then maybe, you might do it in a slightly different way. Anyway, prompts are good. Okay, this is the rest. Maybe I should do the step. I realized, yeah, step two. So I'm going to try to make sure that that I cover the entire step before I decide anything, if it's good or not, because this is still step 2, define the central conflict. Give the protagonist a really convincing reason for wanting to achieve their goal. The more the protagonist cares about their goal, the more invested readers will be in your story. If they're in this story for no apparent reason, it will be easy for readers to put the book down. But if their life or their reputation or their relationship with their family is on the line, readers will be hooked. Once you know the protagonist's goal, figure out what's getting in their way. It might be an evil villain, a force of nature, or even the protagonist's own fears and flaws. If you want some ideas for what's stopping your protagonist from achieving their goal, check out our article, The 7 Main Types of Conflict. Let's take The Hunger Games by Susan Collins as an example. The protagonist's goal is to win the Hunger Games because she promised her little sister that she'd come home alive. The central conflict is that 23 other contestants are competing in the games too, and only one of them can survive. This is a great example of a story with a high-stakes central conflict. The thing about these high-stakes thing, I always thought that, okay, for something to be high-stakes, it has to be life or death. But that really isn't the case, maybe someone would be, I don't know, Like if you take a kid in school type of story and the central conflict is the upcoming finals, and the kid has to get an A in their finals or their parents will be mad or something. It doesn't have to be a life or death situation. Yeah, so what they're saying here, so you have to make the protagonist's reason for wanting to achieve a goal, you have to make it believable. And you have to make it so that it's clear that the protagonist really cares about their goal. And if they really care about their goal, the reader will be more invested. So I'm wondering, like, if their goal was something, I don't know, controversial in a sense, something that readers will probably disagree with as a goal, but if the protagonist is somewhat invested in it emotionally, somehow, that readers will still agree or follow or be invested in this character's journey. That's something to think about. So basically make sure the goal is clear. Make sure the obstacle is clear. So that's what defining the central conflict is. So you really have to make sure that it's clear before you even start writing the story. But if you just have a vague idea, how do you know what the central conflict is going to be? Like, what if the central conflict doesn't happen until later on? So you're still going to think about that in the beginning? It sounds like a kind of a planner kind of thing to do, but I don't know. Maybe some pantsers do immediately think about it. I mean, I feel like I might think about it without realizing it. I don't really know. It depends on the story. I don't really know. Anyway, nothing particularly jarring yet. Okay. Step 3. I'm going to go ahead a little bit. Okay, there's 2 slides for step 3. We're going to go through this. Develop your characters. Okay. So this is when we develop the characters. That is interesting. I find it interesting because I feel like coming up with a character, you've already done that at the story idea conception stage. No? Yes? Or the conflict, defining the conflict stage? Don't you already, I mean, if you're thinking about what kind of things your character wants, what kind of obstacles they have, aren't you already developing the character at that stage? I feel like the developing the character part shouldn't always be separate from the other steps. Some other writing articles also separate this step. I don't know if it should be. Maybe, I guess it depends on what kind of developing you're doing. Well, let's see what kind of developing ProWritingAid is saying that we should do. Or should I say Hannah Gang is saying that we should do. The next step is character development. It's time to figure out who your story is about. Let me get into my reading voice here. Start with a main character. First, figure out what they sound like. Are they talkative or quiet? What kind of slang do they use? What is their sense of humor like? Next, work out what they look like. Do they have any defining gestures? What's the first thing people notice about them? Finally, and most importantly, understand their motivations and their internal characteristics. What are their flaws? What are their values? What are they afraid of? How will they change and grow over the course of this story? For example, if your protagonist's primary flaw is that she's afraid to trust anyone, the central conflict should force her to trust others in order to get what she wants. That way, for better or for worse, she'll have a different relationship with trust by the end of the story. Once you have the protagonist planned out, it's time to think about the antagonist and major side characters. Ask yourself the above questions for each of your most important characters. It's okay if you don't have them all figured out yet. Many authors write new characters into their novels as they go. As long as you know your main characters enough to start drafting, you're on the right track. Okay, so the kind of developing that they're talking about is exact, like, personalities and characteristics of the character, and their tone of voice and their sense of humor, their defining gestures, motivations, their flaws and values, what are they afraid of, all this internal and external stuff that create an actual character. This is sounding a lot like a planner's step-by-step rather than someone who is a pantser, because I do pantsing, which is also called discovery writing. Basically discovering the story and the characters as I go. So I don't have a lot of, I have like a vague idea of like characters. Like if I'm starting a new story, like I have a kind of a vague idea of what they look like, what some of their main values are in life, and some kind of, I don't know, usually it's some kind of quirks and stuff that I've thought of, and how they talk, and what their sense of humor is like, probably. Sometimes depending on the character, but usually have like a vague sort of idea, and then I just start writing, and then sometimes they surprise me. So this is sounding like a planner step by step. So I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't do this so early on, this much character development. I mean, because I write a lot of character-driven stories, so whatever happens, whatever the character does is really heavily related to the lore and the plot, so it kind of goes hand in hand, you know. I'm writing a character, and then something in the lore happens, and then the character shows a moment of bravery that I didn't know they had, and I'm like, oh, well, you can do those things, okay. And it wasn't something that I had really thought of beforehand, like, because there wasn't a moment, and there wasn't a moment, yes, and there wasn't a moment either before that would make me think that, oh, this character is a very, very brave person, because there wasn't even a moment for them to show that. And then later it comes up, and I'm like, oh, okay. So you're kind of brave about that. Okay, I see. And then I try to make that happen again towards the climax, you know. So, I mean, I guess if you know that beforehand, it's good to know that beforehand if you want to do that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having this as step 3, what I'm saying. But would you think about major side characters at this point? At step 3, major side characters? Isn't that more like when you think about like the plot and stuff? I mean, I guess if you're writing like a multi-POV, then you, like multi-point of view, multi-POV, then you might, you know, think about your major side characters at this point. But I don't know. Step 3, if you're developing characters, I would only think you'd be developing the protagonist, and not the major side characters. Maybe the antag, but I don't know. What do you think? Is this too early to be thinking about major side characters and all this details about the protagonist? I feel like it is, but maybe that's just me. It's good that ProWritingAid says it's okay if you don't have them all figured out yet. Many authors write new characters into their novels as they go. As long as you know your main characters enough to start drafting, you're on the right track. So it's good that they say that, so you don't have to feel like you have to create this very sound, well-rounded, complete character so early on in the writing stage, and you haven't even started actually writing yet. So it's good that they say that. It's good that they don't make you feel like you have to have everything set up before you start writing. It's good that they don't do that. Okay, step 4 is set the stage. Okay, we're setting the stage now. I suppose that is I'm imagining. Okay, I'm imagining if I'm like a ProWritingAid, like I'm found this article, I just started writing, I don't know what to do, so I'm gonna follow ProWritingAid steps, and I would imagine that after character development comes setting the stage. I mean, you have to put them somewhere. Okay, let's read. Well, I'm going to read. You don't have to read it. You just listen. Once you have your characters down, it's time to decide where and when your story will take place. You might want to set your story in a fictional world of your own making, or you might want to set it right in your own backyard. I just had a thought. What if you actually did write a story based on your own backyard, your actual backyard? Have people done that? That would be kind of fun. I mean, it's like you're actually taking an actual real place because it's your backyard. You would describe everything that's in your backyard. And then there's fairies or something. I don't know. I just had that thought. Anyway, we're moving on. Maybe your story works best in a big city, or in a small village, or in a forest, or on a beach, or in a tunnel, or on the car. Sam I am, green eggs and ham. Tangent. Time is an important component of setting too. What decade is your story? I said that weird. What decade is your story set in? How much time elapses over the course of your book? Is it a single night like in A Christmas Carol? Or a year like each book in the Harry Potter series? Or decades like in David Copperfield? Whatever you choose, you should make sure the setting works well with your story concept and central conflict. The time and place of your story will really affect its mood and atmosphere. It might even play an important role in how the conflict gets resolved. Okay, so that will set the stage. Okay, it's interesting. I'm saying it's interesting because they say time is an important component of setting too. So at this point, this is the first point you're going to think about what era your character is from, which I think is kind of weird. Won't you do that when you're developing your character? Won't you do that in step 3? Because the values that a character had, the values that somebody had in, I don't know, what, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, might be different than the values someone has now. So imagine someone, maybe, I don't know, some 19-year-old person, what they were doing and what they valued in life would be very different to someone, would be very different if you go like in the 1990s and 2024, somebody who's 19-year-old is a 19-year-old now, and someone who was a 19-year-old in 1990, they would have completely different values, right, in life, like what they want to do in life and all that kind of stuff. So we're going back for a second here, because develop your characters, they say that you have to think about what are their flaws in their values, what are they afraid of. Like maybe someone in 1990 would have been afraid of, I don't know, what were they afraid of? What were they afraid of back then? Let me choose a different era, okay? How about somebody who is 19 years old in the 1800s? They might be afraid of, I don't know, technology. They might be afraid of too much technology in the world, you know, when and stuff like that. Or think about the time when the computer first came out. I once heard from my mom, who's a 1950s person, and so she was around when the computers were first coming into the workplace, and I remember her telling me that people then were kind of afraid of the computers and typewriters and stuff like that. Like they were used to those things, but they were like, computer, and the printers were kind of like, So, but now it's like virtual reality and stuff like that, right? So I don't know why I said it like that. But you know what I mean? So if you're not creating a character set in era at the time of developing your characters at the time of step 3, I don't know how you're going to develop your characters. Your characters, not flaws. Your character's values. Flaws, maybe too. I mean, who knows? Because we are, the era that we grow up in, the era that is around us, really affects how we live and what we value and what we see is important in life. I guess that's what we value. Things like that. So it really shapes us as, people. So, it's completely different depending on the era you're in. And I'm repeating myself, but I think that you should be thinking about the setting as you're developing the character, because you might think, okay, my character values, I don't know, technology. Values the use of technology in the workplace. Oh, but wait. She lives in the 1800s. They didn't have technology then. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of a scenario where it won't work, because I feel like sometimes there are cases where you can't do it like that. Oh, wait, how about in diversity? Someone who values diversity of, I don't know, gender equality, religion, whatever. Those sort of things, that someone who values diversity in the 1960s versus now is very, very different. Here's some young person, their values and that would be completely different, right? If you're looking at a historical standpoint here. So if you think, okay, I have my characters and my story idea, I am going to set the setting. But wait, I just thought of something. Guys, I just thought of something. Why aren't you setting the setting at the story idea stage? I mean, think about it. That makes more sense, to setting the stage in the story idea stage. If they're saying setting the stage, time is an important component of setting too. That's what they're saying. What decade is your story set in? That part, I think, should be from the story idea stage, because it's the idea that you have, like, what if I write a story taking place in the 1800s, and my character is a girl who is going to get on a ship and go to a different country. And while she's on that ship, mutiny happens. I'm thinking of Confessions of Charlotte Doyle by Avi. It's a very good book. So if you have this at the story idea stage, you would set the stage, wouldn't you? Not here. especially about the time, like what decade or era, that part. The part of setting the stage that you might do later is like the actual day, like the actual start of the story, like where does this begin? Where does the story begin is maybe what you would think about later on, after the story idea stage. Because the story idea is just the idea. It's like the entire plot, right? So then not the entire plot, but like, the premise. It's like, my story is going to be about cats on Mars. And then the stage step, you would say something like, we begin on a day when the Martian, when there is a big Martian storm on Mars, and it was unusually dark, something like that. That is setting the stage. So you're taking a point in time, like a day, like this day or this night or this afternoon or whatever. And you're also going to think about if it's taking place. Will you think about what it's taking place in a big city or small village or forest or beach? I feel like you still might do that at the story idea stage. Or maybe does it depend on how much of an idea that you came up with at the story idea stage? How much of an idea do they want us to come up with? Hold on. How much? Did they say anything about that? It does say it's okay if you don't know all the details of your idea. All you need is a basic premise. So if all you need is a basic premise, then maybe you won't be thinking about if the story is set in the city. But what if your story idea is a city that is built on an ice cube or something like that? I don't know, that was pretty random, but you know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I just feel like the setting the stage thing is like not a completely separate step, is what I'm saying. At least one thing I will say, ProWritingAid, Hannah Gang, these are steps. Like, we're going like, you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this. These aren't written as like writing tips. Like, there are writing advice articles that say, here are steps, and then they give you tips instead of steps. But these sound like steps, because now it says, once you have your characters down, it's time to decide where and when your story will take place. So at least it sounds like that. Step 5. We're already at step 5. That was so fast. Or was it? I don't know. I'm not checking the time. Step 5 is plan your key plot points. That's okay. There are 2 slides for this. At this point, it's time to do the step that some authors love and some authors hate. Outline. Alrighty, I see you, ProWritingAid. You are giving steps for planners, aren't you? Okay. Listen. I tried outlining a story and then writing it. I could not write that story for 2 years. I couldn't. I just felt so like limited, and there was so much writer's block. I just couldn't follow the outline. I just had so much trouble. And one day I thought, okay, I want to write these books, okay? There are at least 4 books that I had thought of. I was going to completely ditch the outline, keep a vague lore idea in mind, and just write the story. And then I thought, I'm also going to use the nanosite. And if you don't know what the nanosite is, it's a 50-key challenge. So I set a 50-key challenge for myself, because you can do that on that site. So I did that. And I wrote like 4 books in like 2 months. Yeah, I just pantsed it. I just pantsed the whole thing. So I really am not a planner. I'm not an outliner. I can't do it. I'll read this anyway. I can't give any inputs because I don't do it. Some of you who listen to this if you're an outliner, let me know, do you agree with what they're saying and stuff like that. Anyway, let's read. Outlining the important plot points of your story in advance will help ensure you don't run into major roadblocks along the way. There are countless different forms of classic story structure you can reference. Some, such as 3-act structure, give you as few as 3 beats to work with. Others, such as the Save the Cat beat sheet, give you dozens with specific beats to hit throughout your story. If you're a pantser rather than a plotter, oh, good, they talk about pantsers. Meaning that you prefer to discover the story as you write, you don't have to create a detailed outline. But they still want you to create an outline? However, you should still plan out the key plot points to give yourself a sense of direction. At the very least, plan out the inciting incident, the midpoint turn, and the climax. The inciting incident, also known as the catalyst, is an event that changes your protagonist's normal life and propels them into the central conflict of the story. The midpoint turn is a major discovery in the middle of the story that increases the stakes and forces the protagonist to become more proactive in pursuing their goal. The climax is the culmination of the main conflict of the story when the protagonist either achieves or fails to achieve their goal. Knowing these 3 beats will give you a roadmap for your first draft. So they still tell you to outline a little bit. No. I cannot write anything down. I really cannot write anything down, pre-write anything down. But I will tell you as a pantser that when I begin a story, I usually have a vague idea of how it starts, what I kind of want something to happen in the middle, but I definitely know how it's going to end, how I want it to end. So the way I go about writing is that I write towards the end, and some wacky things can happen in the middle, it's fine. But I will shift and move things around as I'm writing. When I mean move, I mean like I'm pushing the character in this direction or that direction, pushing the antagonist in this direction or that direction. But in the end, this is what's happening. Okay, so I make it happen. Hold on, I'm going to drink a bit of water here. Are you guys keeping dehydrated? Dehydrated? Keeping hydrated. You don't want to keep dehydrated. Don't do that. Keep hydrated. Don't keep dehydrated. It's been hours since I had coffee, but I'm talking like I had coffee. That's weird. Yeah, so, see you. I want to know if you're a planner, an outliner. I want to know, planners, outliners. Is this classic story structure? Do you like write down the 3 beats and write something underneath it? Like, how do you actually go about all these outlining? Like, I'm just picturing like beginning and then like several bullet points, and then middle and then several bullet points, and then end, climax, and several bullet points. That's kind of what I'm picturing what our outline looks like. I know some people use like cards and stuff to like outline, I guess. Sticky notes. I really don't know how well that stuff works. You planners and outliners, you are so darn organized. I've seen pictures of some of your stuff, and it's like, oh gosh, look at that. The wall filled with sticky notes, but it's all so nicely organized. No idea how you do it. No idea how you can then write after that. I wouldn't be able to do it at all. I tried outlining, okay? I tried it. It just didn't. It's just tough for me. I've written a 50K book in 2 weeks. So, and that's with no planning. The only little bit of sort of planning I kind of did was because the story I was writing at that time was based in a world inspired by Egypt in the 1850s. So I watched a whole lot of documentaries about that time and everything and all that stuff. And there was another story that I wrote in quite a short time, which was the setting is inspired by ancient Cambodia. So I looked up a lot of documentaries and pictures and stuff like that just to get myself in the setting mode, you know, and the vibes and everything, so that when I actually start writing the story, I have it clear in my mind. But that's about the only preparation I did for those. So it's not really outlining or anything, but it's just, you know, preparation. Did do some preparation, but I did write those stories in like 2 weeks. So not bragging or anything, but I'm just like, I go in with nothing and I write in 2 weeks. So I have no idea how you do it after all that outlining, all that writing down and everything. It's like, I don't have no idea. Does this save the cat thing? You know, I'm very, very curious because I'm not an outliner or a script writer or anything like that. Okay, so I'm not going to buy the book Save the Cat, but I want to know why it's called Save the Cat. Tell me why it's called Save the Cat. This has anything to do. Do they talk about cats at all in the book? Because I like cats, and I like a book with a cat in it. And I was told that has nothing to do with cats. So why have Save the Cat in the title? It has to have something. There has to be something about Save the Cat. Why is it called Save the Cat? Can someone please tell me? Thank you. So they're saying that the pantser needs to also come up with some things, but I think, well, it depends on what kind of pantser you are. If you're really just right by the seat of your pants like I am, I mean, I wouldn't recommend writing anything down. I just have it in my noggin, and then I just write and see what happens, because that's the fun of pantsing. It becomes very, very messy and everything, but I mean, that's what editing is for, and that's what I do during editing. I just fix it during the editing and all that stuff. Well, anyway, that was the first 5 steps, actually. It's the end of this video, coming to the end. Summary. So, we looked at the first 5 steps, which were choose a story idea, define the central conflict, develop your characters. Interesting, kind of interesting. Set the stage at step 4. I don't know. I really don't know. You know, can you really actually give clear-cut steps on how to write a fiction book? Can you actually really give clear-cut steps? Isn't everything kind of mishy-mashed together? Step 5 is plan your key plot points. I feel like, this is just my feeling, okay? The reason they add pantsers in here, because they are ProWritingAid. And ProWritingAid was the top search results in this how to write a fiction book search result. And because they are the top, they better talk about everything. They better not miss anybody. So they talk about planners, and then they feel like forced talked about pantsers. But I could be wrong. I feel like they forcefully did it, but I could be wrong. But I just think it's weird if pantsers are like discovery writers and they discover the story as they write and they don't work with an outline. Why are you telling them to think about their key plot points beforehand? Like how, what? I feel like it's a little contradictory to what it means to be a pantser, but I mean, each to their own, I suppose. I don't know, because I don't do this. I don't do this stuff. I don't write anything down. I don't think about the I think about the climax a little bit. I think about the ending, like the resolve, like how I want it to be resolved is what I think about. And a little bit in the middle. But a lot of the inciting incident and the midpoint turn, I usually discover it as I write. So, I don't know. I feel like a lot of pantsers do it like that, like how I do, but I could be wrong. Maybe it's just me. Maybe this is just how I work. Maybe I'm weird. Anyway, that is the it. That is the it. That is the it for the part 1. That is it for part 1. Let me know what you think. And I just hit my mic. I wonder if you can hear it when I hit my mic. I don't know. I do that a lot. I hit my mic. I try to reach for something like a water bottle or something like that, and then I hit my mic. Anyway, that is the end of part 1. Like and subscribe if you want to like and subscribe. Although I would really, really like it if you subscribed. It's free anyway to subscribe. Nothing is behind a paywall over here. So step 2. Step 2. My head is just filled with steps. Oh my gosh, there were only 5 steps, but my head is swimming with steps. So part 2, I'm gonna see if I can record it today. It would be good if I could do it all in one day, but because then I can give it to you guys one after another, which will be great, you know, if I do everything like that beforehand. But we'll see how things go. You won't notice anything is weird because you'll see it one after another, most definitely. And so that is the end of this video. The ending of the video was incredibly long. So let me know your comments down below, and you will hear me in the next video. The Foxo is outo.